What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin, John.
And we are back with yet another album review. Now, we were just going to leave it at 4 reviews this weekend, but this one kind of came up in the comments. We figured, why not check it out? So we are going to go over the latest offering from Enterprise Earth, Death, an Anthology. This comes out on the 24th of February on MNRK Heavy. This band formed in 2014 in Spokane, Washington. This is their 5th full-length. I've seen this band live before. I believe they opened for Dying Fetus years ago when I saw them on St. Patty's Day in Cleveland. That was a fun show. I actually own their album Luciferous, which I thought was, it was okay. But from what I heard, the follow-up, The Chosen, was a lot better, even though I didn't follow up on it. I just, was like, there's a lot of other releases out there. But I did want to check this one out just because I know this band's sound has morphed and shifted over the years, and there might be a reason behind it. Since 2014, they have collected 14 ex-members. That's a very Faceless-like move right there.
Right.
The most recent exit was their vocalist, Dan Watson, who left in 2022. And with that, he was the last remaining original member. So this band has no original members left and now has a new vocalist in Travis Warland. And well, that is definitely a reason why a band's sound can change. You've had so many new members in there that, they're bringing in a lot of different influences. But from what I've seen in terms of press on this band has said this is one of their most ambitious albums yet, and I would say they're pretty right there.
Yeah, I would say that's very spot on. I haven't listened to this band too much, and it's mostly just because my musical tastes over the years have evolved out of deathcore. There's still deathcore I definitely like. I am just large in part less of a fan.
So going into this album, we looked over all the tracks. This is 11 tracks and nearly an hour long. So ambition is definitely something in terms of the size of this album. But getting into it, man, this album is really all over the place. Tonally, it shifts around a lot. It shifts very urgently and jarringly occasionally, or often, actually. This is a really wild listen. The opening track, Abyss, is essentially a lead-in, and honestly, as far as lead-ins go, it's not the worst. You get this
That's true.
Very cynic-y choir effect. There's a big, vocoder auto-tune effect on the vocals, and they're immediately clean vocals, which I don't think clean vocals have ever been really a huge part of this band's sound, but they're definitely on here. It's very atmospheric and lush, and then it kind of kicks into this heavy, groovy breakdown, and then you get to hear, a good sample of the production, which to call this album overproduced would be an understatement.
You can tell they're using laptops. There's a lot of sampling going on. It's got a gigantic atmosphere, but it's all digital.
Yeah. There really isn't anything on here that sounds completely real or very organic at all. Everything feels very wiped clean, very compressed into a tight ball of breakdowns and screams and symphonic elements.
Widdly woos.
And dubstep kind of stutters into breakdowns. A lot of the tropes of a lot of modern deathcore. And as much as I figured, Abyss was kind of just setting it up for your standard kind of more groove-laden, syncopated, chuggy, breakdown-driven deathcore, I have to admit, Face of Fear really opened up in a way I didn't think they would. It's very spazzy, almost kind of like Botch and Dillinger Escape Plan, except, modern deathcore production.
And then it turns into After the Burial and Meshuggah, and then some clean singing, and then literally every other vocal trope imaginable for pretty much any style of metal. There's growls and screams and gutturals and vomit noises and clean singing and harmonized, and it's a hodgepodge immediately.
Yeah, lots of elements that occasionally come together, but mostly I feel kind of collide. And the way the song is structured, of course you have those kind of spazzy moments to start off, and they do repeat those, but in between there you just have the heavy syncopated grooves and the big heavy down tune chugging. The guitars are so low that they honestly sound like basses at points, especially when they're in that big E string. It just kind of blends together as this wall-o chug, which for people that love that, then you'll probably dig that. But need a little bit more distinction. But yeah, it kind of just parries back and forth. And again, this very overproduced sound, like especially on the vocals, there are constantly all sorts of filters and layers on it. Like, again, nothing sounds very natural.
You know when you're younger and you get a PS2, I remember when I got a PS2, and you get the music generator. I got one for sure. And when you start making music, you figure out that you can layer it to the nines and make it sound as lush and as grand as possible. And that's kind of what they did here. They just took everything from a music generator and said, let's put this all together on a track.
Yeah, and it's already kind of a cluster just because of all the stuff and all the production tropes, but when it comes down to like some of these very jarring transitions, like some of these songs end up feeling like 4 songs or 4 parts of 4 different songs that kind of got like in a car wreck and just kind of just like it's just blood and machine parts and like, well, this kind of works. It almost feels like a lot of these guys like wrote this stuff separately without input from the other in terms of how to transition into the next spot, because there are some very strange transitions on here, namely on like Reaper Serpent, Eye Divine, King of Ruination, and Blood and Teeth. Like there are some absolutely jarring transitions, you know, going from like soft and subtle to like a Devin Townsend big lush production to inevitably the big chuggy breakdowns, and then just, well, because it's deathcore, you have to slow down that breakdown and make it extra stupid heavy because deathcore.
Right, you need a cup chime and then just a china at halftime, and that's mostly what it is. Now, they did start to think a little bit outside of the box, at least, with the Reaper's Servant and Spineless. Both those songs had some big, notable, thrashy moments. Like, they're definitely really riffy, and it would have been sweet if they would have stuck with that.
Yeah, the opening of Reaper Servant, like, it comes out swinging, like machine gun riffs. It's got a nice, energetic, fast pace to it, like that double-time stomp. And you're ready to just some killer leads on that song, too. And lead work, honestly, across the board on here is quite exceptional and very flavorful, and there shows a lot of dynamic in the lead work where, you know, sometimes you get those big, epic melodies, like especially on like Curse of Flesh. But sometimes you just get that flat-out, tuneful shredding that is just like, all right, that's just energetic. It's fun. It's kind of loose. And, you know, I ended up digging like every lead on here, even the more technical, weird ones. They're done really well.
And sometimes they harmonize them. Sometimes they'll harmonize them with taps. Like the last song, Curse of Flesh, had a lot of that in it. And probably one of the more cohesive tracks, just as far as riffing is concerned. But yeah, there wasn't a single time when they played a melody where I was like, nah, it's good. Like, whoever's doing the lead work is doing a good job.
And in terms of this album being like more ambitious, it's kind of like give and take. Where it really works is a song like Casket of Rust. This is one of the longer songs on here, but honestly, it paid off because this one has a lot of dynamics, lots of interesting like genre or subgenre shifting within the song. And this is probably one of the first ones where I think the transitions really seemed like they were hammered out.
Yeah, they nailed them well on here. And when it did transition, it went somewhere that made sense.
Yeah.
Like that was a gripe I had, was every time they transitioned, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? But like in the case of Casket of Rust, every time they transitioned, whatever they played after it made sense. And like even melodically it tied together.
Yeah, the tension building on here is odd because there are sections where you feel like they're building tension towards something, you know, a little bit more epic or grand, and then you kind of get the inevitable breakdown, which, yeah, it's deathcore. You got to have breakdowns. That's, you know, what deathcore does. But even like the breakdowns in here, there are some really good ones, but there are some really stock ones as well. Like just kind of just bland, heavy chugging, you know, a fun vocal cadence on top of that. But honestly, it's one of those where if you strip back the big production and all the extra layering and the din of noise behind it, you're going to be left with just kind of a basic breakdown.
And there were a lot of basic breakdowns. In fact, the song King of Ruination, I think they straight up ripped off Meshuggah.
They did.
Both of us, we were jamming. I looked at Nick and I said, that's Meshuggah.
And specifically, it's Rational Gaze. Like, I heard almost the exact same riff. There's even the, you know, slight variation in terms of the note pattern on there, and maybe like a little bit of a bend. It definitely sounds a lot like Rational Gaze, but like this is like Rational Gaze if it was like a big Hollywood remake and generally when it comes down to Hollywood remakes of already good films, that's where they fuck it up and make it worse. I don't want to say like this is the Michael Bay directed version of Rational Gaze, but in a way it kind of is. Like it hones in on that breakdown groove for the majority of the song, and then it just has, again, these kind of wonky transitions that don't feel like they're fully hammered out. You get some strange arpeggios on the gent riff itself, and like it's okay. Like, I mean, it's okay because I already like the song that I think it's aping.
Right?
But when it kind of shifts to this weird industrial transition, the vocals sound like they're being spoken through a broken walkie-talkie, and again, like lots of reverb, and again, it's just sounds too big. And then it just inevitably goes into a big breakdown that's more like deathcore, like kind of a slam breakdown, and then bookends back with that Meshuggah riff. And again, this is like one of those songs where I feel like it's just completely stitched together. I also gotta say, like, vocally, there are things I really like on here, and there are things that I don't like. The things that I don't like are mostly due to production. Like, there are what I would call some pretty decent, clean vocals on here, and it does add another dynamic to their sound. But again, that frequent use of just unnecessary filters on everything. Again, it kind of keeps this from feeling very natural at all. Like, there are some more intimate moments, like the beginning of Blood and Teeth, where you get a soft version of the chorus that repeats in there. That was one of the few clean vocal moments I actually liked, because it didn't sound like it was a cyborg just singing. But the vocals also contribute to the atmosphere, which I don't know how much more the atmosphere needs contributions.
It doesn't.
I mean, you get plenty on Casket of Rust where, there's a lot of symphonic bits. It kind of adds to the more black metal sections that pop up in there. Spineless has a lot of, big symphonic backing. Like, there's a lot of comparisons to be made to Shadow of Intent. I think one of the members actually guests on here. But sometimes it's just a bit much and a bit needless. Like, the opening of I Divine sounds like every spooky music box you've ever heard in a scary movie. Like, oh, the ghost turned it on. Mm-hmm. And then you have Malevolent Force, which I don't know what the noise is that kicks that up, but it sounds like someone farting into a paper towel roll. Like, just added a lot of reverb to it. And, I suppose it was just like the stock foghorn noise they had in there, and like, yeah, no, this works. But it sounds like they lowered it, and no, it doesn't set the tone and make it spooky or anything like that. It just seems extra, and extra is kind of the thing on this album. Like, there's just too much stuff. And
a lot of that is akin to the song length. I mean, we've got 11 songs, almost an hour. Some of these tracks are 6, 7, almost 8 minutes long. Having a lot of stuff and having a lot of parts doesn't mean it's going to be quality. Thusly, having a lot of length in a song is pointless if you're not going to fill it with entertaining shit.
Yeah, I Divine was one that I thought was just a collection of just ideas. Again, like, you have industrial moments that sound like Marilyn Manson, or Motionless in White, which they worship Marilyn Manson and, probably wear the same makeup. But, like how they segue back and forth into different stuff. Like, there's some moments on here that remind me of Black Dahlia Murder. And I really like those moments. And they definitely have the chops to play them.
Correct.
It's just, they kind of just keep transitioning over to just random stuff. And again, like, not much of this really feels as though it flows as a song. It flows as like a collection of riffs and ideas that, again, were like kind of par-baked and put out. Except for one track in particular, which, oh my God, like, this song stands out from the pack like you wouldn't believe.
Yep, I would listen to this song over and over again, and I'm going to be honest, chances are, as soon as we shut off this camera, I'm going to put it back on, because it was a banger of a song. The song Accelerated Demise, the instrumental track on this record, is brilliant. A cross between Mastodon and Animals as Leaders, and like, just firing on all cylinders, and the transitions make sense, and musically, it's sound.
It's easily the smoothest song on here. Like, none of the transitions are jarring. In fact, this one has a loose, sort of fun vibe to it that really does not appear on the rest of the album. Like, the rest of this album feels very labored in terms of, like, we have to make this part extra big, or we have to make this breakdown extra heavy. And, not all the ingredients are great, but this song, I don't know, like, I don't know what happened with this one. Like, this was just like a jam session, and they decided, like, no, we can put this one out as a, instrumental in here, but it absolutely rips. Like, the leads on it are fucking amazing. There's great groovy sections to it. There's, like, fun D beats. And it also fits with the whole vibe of the album being a little bit more experimental and trying to explore different genres and such. Because it does. Yeah. But it comes together really well. And honestly, it was the most enjoyable track on here for me. So, like, this album wasn't without some successes in terms of experimenting. But, like, a good chunk of it is just kind of all over the place. And the overall effect I got was I found a lot of stuff that I liked in terms of moments and songs. But then, they would get lost in the shuffle of just kind of ludicrous songwriting.
That makes it difficult to pinpoint a majority of these songs on this record. Like, the ones I can pull out that I really liked had enough unique moments in them and were executed well enough to really stand out. But we're talking about 2 or 3 songs out of 11 on an hour record. If you can't tell Face of Fear apart from The Reaper's Servant or apart from King of Ruination, what's the point?
Pretty much it's like, you ever been to a party and they're doing the jungle juice thing and everyone gets to, throw in an ingredient and you don't know everyone at the party and they're just throwing in whatever. And, by the time you decide to brave it, it's probably got Windex in it. This is just too many ingredients and it kind of just hampers this album. It's kind of bogged down by its own weight. And that's kind of the thing with ambition. You shoot for the moon and land among the stars, or realistically, you don't achieve escape velocity and you burn up in re-entry. And I think that kind of feels like a good chunk of this, but there are some moments because honestly, if you strip back the ridiculous production on here, I still think there's some gems. Like, there's some solid songs in here. So overall, I'm going to give this 2.5. This is okay. Like, the songs that I liked, the songs that I think that really came together and actually showcased the ambition and the talent to put them together, I think are excellent. Like, Casket of Rust, I think that's really a solid song. Like, that shows a lot of good songcraft in there. And unfortunately, it's something that doesn't necessarily pop up as much in terms of like transitions and kind of getting outside of the comfort zone, but doing it well. Accelerated Demise is absolutely banging instrumental. There was one track I would recommend on here. Check that one out. And that really doesn't have anything to do with the vocals not being on there. Vocally, I think, it's pretty decent. Like, this is his first go with the band. But again, this is just a lot of stuff. Like, this could have been 2 EPs, and it probably still would have been a lot, because, 2 30-minute EPs, this. Yeah, again, lots of killer moments on songs. It's kind of my thing. Like, yeah, I would come back and listen to, like, this part of this song in particular, but maybe not all of it. But if you're a fan of, I don't know, like, maybe, like, Fit for an Autopsy, kinda... Shadow of Intent, definitely, but again, I think Shadow of Intent does it a lot better. And maybe Whitechapel, but I think Whitechapel kind of does the progressing deathcore thing a little bit better as well. But still, check it out. Who knows, you might really dig it, but yeah, it was just okay for me.
I'm going to go ahead and give this 2 stars. The sum of this record to me was talented musicians struggling to write cohesive songs. There's a lot of good things as far as musicianship is concerned. Like, they're all very talented. Whoever's writing their riffs or leads, you're doing a killer job. The drummer is doing a great job. Like, everybody together as a musician is firing well. The band as a whole, like you said, doesn't seem to be either A, communicating with each other, or B, listening to the people trying to communicate, because it is, for the most part, just a hodgepodge of random riffs that don't necessarily fit together. Because I'll be honest, there's a cool part in every song, but it's either what comes before it or after it that kind of kills it. Like, a lot of the times I thought that when they did try to build, they'd cut off that build really quickly and then dive into something that had nothing to do with what they started with. And, like, it kind of kills the vibe and momentum. And killing off that vibe and momentum just kind of kills it from song to song. Like, I was curious to see what came next, but every time something did happen next, I was like, well, that doesn't really work. But man, when this band jams, they jam out really hard. Casket of Rust was a great song, and even though I had problems with some moments of blood and teeth and the last song, Curse of Flesh, there were still actually decent moments in those songs, and those songs I also thought to be a little bit more cohesive. But overall, picking 4 songs out of an 11-song record that's an hour long, that doesn't need to be an hour long, just kind of killed it for me. That's my opinion, though. You can tell me to go F myself. That's fine. I would still recommend checking it out. If you've been following this band for a while, this again is more ambitious for them, and you may have a completely different take on that, and we support that. If you're a fan of After the Burial, a little bit of Periphery, Meshuggah, the Acacia Strain, Fit for an Autopsy, just give this a spin. You might enjoy it. Personally, it wasn't for me, but yeah.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our YouTube channel, down in the right-hand corner on the banner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts there. We have new ones. We have old ones that are at a discounted price, provided we have your size. We even have hats there, so if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And as always, a ton of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal. We've got album reviews, we have discography rankings coming, the Black Dahlia Murder, and then the Almighty Meshuggah. Nick's got his collection updates. There's States of Metal. What's John Jamming? I'll be back at some point, I promise. But really, all this stuff that we keep doing for you guys, because you guys continue to show your love and support for us, and we are truly grateful and blessed by that fact. It's been an awesome ride here at Thralls of Metal, and we couldn't do it without you guys. Yeah,
you guys absolutely rule, and yeah, it's just been a buttload of fun, because, you know, metal is such a great escape, and talking about it is actually a ton of fun. That's another reason why we keep doing it.
Cathartic.
Yeah. But yeah, looking forward to overloading you guys with content. So one more big thank you, and we will catch you later.